Hello and welcome to today's lecture on presidential debates. This concerns two different readings that had two different perspectives about, but here's my dog again. Two different perspectives about the value of presidential debates. So the first reading that I'm going to be talking about was written by Raskin, and it's called Presidential Debates Limit Choice and Exclude Third Parties. So this is a position that's against presidential debates, the televised presidential debates between the Republican and Democratic candidate as they currently take place. There's only one major term from this reading that I want to make sure that you note, and that is Commission on Presidential Debates. This is the organization run by members of the Democratic National Party and the Republican National Party. That's not it. National Committee. They're the committees. And they're also responsible for making sure that, according to Raskin, these debates stay just between the two major parties. So the Commission on Presidential Debates has been organizing these bipartisan, so two-party presidential debates since 1987. Raskin claims that this is quite biased because there are no non-partial people involved on the committee to make sure that people other than Republicans and Democrats might be able to run. The Commission on Presidential Debates, CPD, decides who gets to appear on the debate stage, and as Raskin tells us, the parameters for this decision are pretty subjective. So here are some of Raskin's complaints with the CPD, and this is the major takeaway from this reading, is that the game is rigged. Only people who appear in debates are viable for election because they're the only names that people recognize when they get to the ballot. And since the election debates are rigged to have only the Republican or Democratic candidate appear on stage, then only the Republican or Democratic candidate could ever win. So the CPD excludes new or anti-establishment perspectives, typically, although I think that people could argue that when Donald Trump was originally running for president in 2016, he was considered an anti-establishment candidate. However, once he secured the Republican nomination to be the Republican candidate for president, he then secured the more establishment position as one of the two key debaters. So the CPD is run by organizations that are biased towards a two-party system, and in addition to being only run by Republican or Democratic interests, the CPD is closely connected to corporate interests. Major corporations want stability because stability is good for most kinds of business, and therefore we want establishment, predictable candidates to win elections. We do not want outsiders who may not like corporations winning elections. There were a couple of guiding questions, three in fact, a few, listed at the beginning of this chapter. And these were written by the editor of the book, not by Raskin. However, I've labeled them page 151-52. So how does the Commission on Presidential Debates stifle participation by third parties? What is the relationship between the Commission and corporate sponsors? And what criteria should candidates have in order to appear on the debate stage, according to Raskin? So here are my proposed answers to these questions. How does the Commission stifle participation by third parties? Well, it's run by Democrats and Republicans instead of a more politically diverse membership base. If you hear squeaking, that's my dog chewing on a chew toy. I thought you'd get a kick out of him being present, but maybe it's annoying and I'll create him if you hate having him pop up in the videos. Okay, second thing, the CPD uses arbitrary justifications to include or exclude debate participants. So the Commission could use a lot of different rules in order to allow people to participate on the debate stage for the general election. So that's the one between different parties instead of the one within a party. We're in the primaries right now for the Democrats. So the CPD uses these arbitrary justifications. The one that they've selected is polling results. So candidates have to receive 15% on average voter interest or voter loyalty. Voters would have to say, I would vote for that person. So 15% on average across 5 major national polls. However, you cannot pick someone who does not appear on the poll. So if the polls themselves are biased against third-party candidates, and they often are, then it's not very helpful for someone who's a little bit of an outsider to try and enter these debates. In terms of the relationship between the Commission on Presidential Debates and corporate sponsors, you can think of the presidential debates kind of like the Super Bowl for politics. So we know that the Super Bowl is sponsored by lots of different corporations. We understand that arenas are named after big companies like Pepsi or whatever. So since debates are like major sporting events, they're a promotion fest for things like Anheuser-Busch or other companies that are getting in on this kind of attention. So corporate sponsors get free advertising for subsidizing the debates. Corporations also want to make sure they can predict what kind of effect different candidates are going to have on business. They don't know for sure how a Green Party or Libertarian candidate would affect them, but they can make pretty good guesses about how a Democrat or Republican leader would affect them. Raskin proposes a number of new criteria to decide who should be on the debate stage, because Raskin thinks it's really bad for democracy that third-party candidates never appear. The reason Raskin thinks it's bad for democracy is that we never get new perspectives, or we seldom get new perspectives. So Raskin says someone has to be eligible to run for president, according to the Constitution. The person's name has to appear on a ballot in several states, so this involves gathering thousands of signatures. And then finally, the candidate must be reasonably likely to affect the outcome of the election or to advance public discourse. So someone who's cuckoo bananas shouldn't appear on the debate stage, basically, and somebody who doesn't have valuable things to say shouldn't appear on the debate stage. And Raskin recognizes that that last bullet point there is very subjective, so Raskin proposes that a new kind of presidential debate commission should exist, and this new commission should have its own criteria. So those are the requirements to serve as a U.S. president according to Thought Co. This is an infographic. You have to be older than 35, have to have been a resident of the U.S. for at least 14 years, so even if you're a U.S. citizen but you've never lived in the U.S., you can't run for president. And you must have been born in the U.S. or have one parent who's a U.S. citizen. So Raskin's reform model for the new debate commission, he says it should be made up of 23 American citizens chosen at random, so we should get a smattering of lots of different political beliefs if we randomly select. Sorry, that chew toy is probably pretty annoying. If we randomly select 23 American citizens, we'll have diverse perspectives. One other beef that Raskin has with the current method of selecting who participates in debates is that usually it's journalists and other public figures who are debate moderators, and Raskin thinks that we should have people from universities, foundations, unions, and civic groups be much more involved instead of just relying on mainstream news media to be the arbiters of information in a debate, and we should also minimize corporate involvement. So with that, I'm going to stop this video and start a new video for the Shankman reading, and hopefully I'll take away this chew toy from my dog so you don't get that lovely audio effect on the next one. All right, talk to you soon.